The articulation on the helmet is pretty decent. This can swivel and then you can lift it up, and there's another part that... Oh, you mother... Hi everyone, Budget Stark here. Thanks again for tuning in. In today's video we are continuing the Hulkbuster series of videos where I will be talking about the articulation, the light up features, answering some questions that I had about this figure, and some tips that I picked up whilst playing about the figure for a few hours. Hopefully you guys don't make any mistakes or damage your figure, because I think you saw a little bit earlier I did so accidentally. I'm going to start off with talking about the bust. So yes, the helmet can swivel and it can come off. So if you want to put on a helmeted Tony Stark head sculpt, you can. Some people did ask, can the neck post come out? I tried wiggling it around, tried to take it out. It's pretty sturdy, so I don't think you can take that off. Another popular question I had was about Veronica and the jackhammer arm. Why is that not included in this figure set? I know jackhammer, the left arm, and Veronica was shown at exhibitions. Maybe originally Hot Toys wanted to include it. However, due to the large amount of upgrades, talking about the metal hips, the metal joint here at the bottom around the hip section, the legs, the upgrades with regard to articulation points, you can fit in the whole Mark 43, extra articulation around the feet area, which I'll show you a little bit later. I think initially they did want to put in, however, because of all those upgrades and the costs of development, maybe the time factor as well, I don't think they include it because of that factor. Because the Veronica and the jackhammer arm was never put out as an official announcement, or they didn't put anything in regards to the specifications, it wasn't included. On top of that, just remember, all of those upgrades were free upgrades. There were no additional costs involved to the collectors when they bought it, so I think that's quite a decent trade-off. I actually have the small Veronica from the King Arts 1 in 9th scale die-cast Hulkbuster, and it just sits in my accessories drawer, purely because I think it looks a bit strange. It's a bit out of place floating in the background, so that's something that I didn't want to actually use. Another popular question is about the light up features around everywhere. Why didn't Hot Toys create a remote control or a centralized system for the light up features? If you take a step back, I don't think there's any 1/6 scale figure that's articulated that has that type of feature. And if you look at this from a logical standpoint, and from a production standpoint, to have a centralized system that has wires going to all the different parts of the arm, the head, the back, the front, the legs, it'll be a nightmare. If any part of that is damaged, you would essentially have to change the whole figure. On top of that, people were talking about metal contacts to connect, for example, the arm could connect to the body where the battery pack is. If you have that, metal conductors are known to be very unreliable. For example, the helmets, some of them close down and it lights up the eyes. Those are slightly unreliable because the metal contacts aren't always a perfect fit, which means it doesn't light up. So again, it's down to, I would say, logistical issues, production issues, and space and size. Now, if you want to wire up the body to one section, yes, I think that's possible. But to the arms, the head, which, for example, here, is removable, and on top of that the legs, which articulate, that's going to prove a problem in production. I think quality control will be a problem because parts will be damaged when you articulate it, so the light ups feature would probably not work. Will other armors fit inside Hulkbuster? As you can see, the Mark 43 obviously fits because that's what it was designed for. The Mark 42 will obviously fit in there. Something like the Star Boost that has a jetpack, that won't fit in because the jetpack would be in the way. Essentially, it's a hole, so anything of similar size, similar design would fit in this hole, and that pretty much answers that, I think. Would I pose it up using the 43 inside or with the bust? I personally would probably just use the bust. because I think the Mark 43, you only will see the top of the chest and the shoulders if you do decide to put it in, because I would rather have it closed up like this, which means I don't think it'll look very nice and wasting of the Mark 43, and I'd rather put the Mark 43 outside of the Hulkbuster. So it's down to whatever you guys want to do, but I think the bust alone is sufficient, because you will actually only see that portion of the 43, so this is definitely adequate. And the final question is, was it worth the wait? I don't really have a problem waiting for figures. I don't want to order a figure and it turns up immediately. I'm not a collector that has that particular hastiness, if you want to call it that. Other collectors may feel like that, but it's completely subjective, and whether it's worth the wait is completely down to you guys. I'm going to reiterate a couple of points and show you a couple of tips that I learnt whilst playing about with the figure before showing how to suit up the 43, the full body, the full figure 43 into the Hulkbuster. You must use this. This is your friend. This will help you to reduce any damage to your Hulkbuster. Please go through the instructions booklet. It has everything that you'll need to know about suiting it up, moving the articulation points, where to put the batteries, etc. Everything is here. So what I'm going to do to show you a couple of tips that I found is starting off with these joints here, these ball joints. Now this armour of the ball joint comes off very easily, because you need to remove it to help slot in certain parts of the armour. So what I found to be the best thing to put them back on without breaking, I don't want to break this tab and I don't want to break this part that articulates. So what I found the best thing to do is to put your finger underneath the plastic part here, like that, bend this almost 90 degrees and put a finger behind, and then push down together so you only have your fingers are pushing against each other. And then when you do that, it will slot on easily, it can move, it can rotate. That's the best way that I found. When you put in the Mark 43, you need to put on these. I didn't put them on because I'm a rebel and I don't really care if it gets slightly scratched up, because it's a little bit battle damaged anyway. You'll notice very slightly this bottom end here is slightly narrower than the top end. The top end here is for the thighs. So when you wear it, make sure the top end goes on first, slide it up, and he'll wear it like a pair of pantyhose or very long socks, so the leg section does not get scratched up. Then when you slot the body in, put the arms at a slight angle, so 90 degrees, and then push the figure back towards the Hulkbuster so that he's nice and snug in there. His arms, I'll just show you, will tuck in like that into that cavity. His head towards the middle, not right to the back, because that's where the helmet will go on. To put this portion on first, I would actually remove the helmet. I find removing the helmet makes it a lot easier, and you can put that back on afterwards. These little ball joints here, make sure they're straight, and it lines up with a very small socket at the back here and at the back here. So you slot that on, you gently push into the socket, and you hear a slight connection sound, and that's it, it's on. Now if you'll notice, this can sit down, and then the head can rotate like so, and it will push the 43 slightly forward, and that's when you put the helmet back on, like so. So what I did was put too much pressure on this side piece here, of which this came off. So it's actually a very small piece of glue. That section there is very small. It's about 1 millimeter in width. So obviously if you put too much force on there, it'll come off, which is what happened here. I can just glue that back on and it'll fit in there like that, no problem at all. So the warning here, if you are articulating the helmet, make sure you only put pressure on this part here, the gold piece, this center section, because this part can lift upwards like so. You see that? I was trying to lift it on this side, pushing like that, and that's what broke off this piece. So if you are lifting up the helmet, make sure you put your thumb around this section, the solid section, not the loose part which is glued on here. A dab of glue will fix that, no problem whatsoever. Lesson: still be delicate with the figure. Even though it is a very sturdy piece, you can put excessive force on the millimeters of plastic joined together by glue. So the Hulkbuster helmet can swivel side to side like this. It's got decent articulation because it has an internal swivel system. The helmet obviously can lift up, lifting from the center of the gold piece here. Now, there's actually even more articulation. This helmet portion here can lift up like that. Like so. These sides of cheek areas can fold and articulate like that. Obviously be careful, it's small bits of plastic again. And the front section can move like that also. The first armour that goes on goes right at the back. The connections for the magnets here and here. So you have to make sure the 43 shoulders are quite far back. If you saw that, I'll do that again. If you saw that, the magnets are pretty strong that it just literally sucks in. So you get the armour, get it close, and then it will just suck it in like so, and is very, very sturdy. The next portion you put in is here. Now you just line up these two magnets with here and here. Just hold like so, and then it will just flip into place like that. And the last bit to close it up, turn these in slightly, magnet piece here, links into this little section that's rectangular, another section that's rectangular, push them together, so just line it up and it'll fit on there just like that. Close up the armors. There's a little bit of articulation at the bottom, it's joint here, and then this closes up, so just line it up like that. This bit drops down, close it up, close it up. These are the shoulder parts, sits in there very snug with a magnet, so it just slots on like that. Same on this side. The final part is to pull the helmet down, be gentle, comes down like this, and the top section closes down. And there you have it. You have the full Mark 43 inside the Hulkbuster. If I was to display the Mark 43 full figure inside, it would probably be like this, removing the neck armour and the front armour. Whether or not you want to have it like that, the contrast is actually quite nice in the centre with the silver. So it's completely down to you guys, but as I said, for me, I would happy be having just the bust in there for my display purposes. Just last thing I want to show you about the helmet area, there's actually a couple of hinges, which means he can fold quite far down and upwards. You see at the top here. So be wary of that when you are articulating the figure. Like so. A lot of areas that he can bend and move around. Just spend a bit of time so you know what the limits are, but as I said, please be careful not to exert excessive force on areas that you're not really meant to. Before I show you some of the articulation points, a couple of notes. Some of the joints may be a little bit stiff, so always refer back to the instructions manual to check whether or not it can be moved. If possible, I would actually suggest having 2 people to help you do it, yourself and a friend, or if you want 3 of you guys in total, because this is a heavy piece. If you're going to pick up the figure, pick it up by the crotch area, use 2 hands to lift it there. Probably best not to hold it under the armpits. Probably, as I said, this is the strongest area because of the metal section here and here around the hips and the leg section, it is a very heavy piece from the waist downwards, extremely heavy. If you are planning on articulating, especially the knee joints and the thigh area, I suggest that you lay it down flat on a towel or a sofa or couch or the bed, somewhere soft, because there are some sharpish points which may scratch up the wood, or you may scratch the figure itself. I'm just going to show you, for example, the Hulkbuster helmet. If you really want to articulate it, this section here moves, these parts move, the head helmet section is in two pieces. The shoulders, for example, can open up like that. This can swivel. A lot of these are on double joints. You have two ranges of motion there and then in again. But I think most of you guys want to know, how does the arm move on top of that? I'm going to show you the gauntlet, how that articulates when I take this off, and also the legs, because the ankle and the feet area is actually very, very impressive. You can articulate the gauntlet from this, where it's completely flush, to something like this, where it has lots of parts moving up and out, and if you look here, there is a light up feature like that. This is completely plastic, so I'm going to show you very quickly. You have a bit that moves up like that, that goes back. This portion lifts up, however, there's a little tab here, so just be careful to lift it up, not too much pressure. That lifts upwards. Also, that comes up, slides out, two portions here come out, and this little bit at the front can open as well. So you end up with something like that when it's all done, with the light up feature, which you can put obviously onto his arm, and these are the two little tabs that affix to the forearm. There are 4 different sizes of batteries: LR44, LR936, LR41 and LR621, depending on which compartment. To insert the batteries, they can be a little bit fiddly because they're small, so I use this little tool from King Arts, which is essentially for battery installation. You stick this in, and then you have a little plunger at the back, pushes it in, and there you have 2 of them put in. The third one, I just put it manually by hand, like so, and then the light up feature is on. That's how I generally do it for the smaller batteries, which tend to be a little bit more fiddly. We're going to work from the top downwards. So I'm going to start off with the chest. It actually does twist. Not a huge amount, but it's actually quite good, bearing in mind there's a whole cavity inside and you've got the bust in. However, note that if you put the full figure of the Mark 43 inside, the twist and the rotation there will be absolutely minimal, barely any movement at all. So if you have the full figure inside, I suggest you don't do any twisting at all. Moving across, you've got the shoulder pads, which have this little movement at the top here on the armour, splits open, and the whole armour can move down and has different pivot points. So you have this part that moves and the piece underneath as well. Now this is on a ratchet joint, you can hear it, and it can go to about 90 degrees. If you move the shoulder pad out of the way, and then in terms of swivel, it can actually go all the way around, up and back as well, and back. I've taken off the gauntlet obviously to help me allow a little bit more movement, just in case I break it. This is another armor piece that can move like this and has 2 parts that bend here and here. So again, you can make the armor flush as you want to pose him up. Now this bicep section can swivel. Again, it's a 360 swivel, like so. Elbow bend. about 75 degrees or so. Pretty decent. If you move down to the wrist section, there's a little spring action on the wrist, so the joint is always covered when it pushes down. The wrist can swivel 360 and can bend quite a decent amount of rotation. If you remember something like the quarter scale Mark 43, or any of the quarter scales, were pretty good for that, and all the fingers articulate. I've had to take a little break, have a drink, change into gym clothes, because I started sweating moving this figure around. It's that heavy, it feels like a workout. There's one thing I forgot to point out, is that these little pistons here, they actually disappear and move up into the body of the bicep. They move into the bicep when you bend it. So nice little design and engineering aspects of the figure. We're actually going to move the legs and the lower portion of the body. Now this is the heaviest part of the figure, so you must put it down somewhere. So I've got it on the sofa. A couple of bits to note: these two little hip joints move similar to something like the die-cast 43, where it allows extra leg movement. Now there isn't any movement outwards like that, there's no movement like that, but it does bend forwards and backwards here and around the knee section as well. So you have a bit of bend here and a bit of bend like that. Okay, now I've had to do this off camera because it's such a heavy beast. You can see that it's a slight angle. That was when it was straight. That's that angle there. It's not a huge amount, but enough for slightly more dynamic poses than museum pose. And then backwards. Oh, fucking hell. And there, that's angled slightly backwards, and you will hear the ratchet sounds around the hips when it does that. So it was around here before, the center is straight there, and then that is backwards. Now here is the knee bend, and you will hear strong ratchet sounds again when it bends backwards. So make sure you hold it on a firm section here. This is a part that comes out, so be careful not to break the tab. This comes out like this, which conceals the battery compartment here. And if you look at the back, is a light up feature. Light up feature is just there. You'll see some very intricate details of the knee repulsor around here and here. This portion of the knee armour also has a little bit of articulation, revealing some of the details below. Now we're going to check out the feet. There's no bottom repulsor here, but there is quite a decent amount of articulation. You can see the bottom sort of toes, if you want to call it, they flex, and the front toe flex. You hear that? That's not me breaking the figure, that's the ratchet joint on the bottom of the toe. As you can see, it flexes like that. Also, this bottom section here, the sole of the foot actually bends downwards like this. I'd hold it via this gold here, you can see that. You grab that and you gently pull down. And you can see quite a decent movement here, and the pistons underneath. The pistons are here. So all in all, you can do quite a lot, and I'm out of breath now. See this movement here on the foot? If you push it back down, so it's flat. There you go. It's a really sturdy piece. Just be careful you're not pushing on any glued on delicate parts, and make sure you grab it by the sturdy parts like the front of the toe, the back of the heel, and the section here around the calf. And if you hold it here around the thigh section. The front flap here has got 2 points of movement, so it lifts up completely on a spring-loaded mechanism and can fold forward like that. But if you decide to angle the foot, because it's spring-loaded, it'll just fall back into a flush type of position, like that. I'm actually only going to light up a few of the compartments on the Hulkbuster. The reason being is that you can light up the top of the helmet here, but I won't be posing it with the helmet down. I will be posing it so you can have the back lit up and the arc reactor at the front. I won't be doing the hands because I'll be lighting up the gauntlets, and here are the leg sections here that will light up. The reason why I'm doing that way is because I'm going to be using the SOAP Reactor, which means that my Hulkbuster will light up automatically in the most bright ways, which will be the main chest. The back you probably won't see because it will be facing more towards the center, the front of the display, and the knees, which are going to be very bright. And so those ones, because the battery compartments are at the back, the wires are going to be very easy to hide, and these are the wires that I use. They're the LR44 wires. So I'm going to show you how it looks like with the battery. So for the back, you just need your fingernail, and there's a magnetic hidden compartment that just comes off like that. Switch it on, and you will see it lit up. I'm going to power down the light so you can see how bright it is. That'll be at the front as well. This compartment comes out, this one comes out, switch on and switch on. Again, just so you can see how bright that is, and I'll turn the figure around so you can see it from the front view. This is with the main light switch on, so you have the arc reactor. Please note you need to fold down the front 2 red chest armors, otherwise you won't see the arc reactor light. Then moving across, you can see the light up on the gauntlets, which are quite bright actually, not bad. Then moving down, you have the knee light up features on both sides and on the inside there. So that is pretty much it for the light up features for Hulkbuster. One thing I will add, you can light up the bust, but because it's closed up you won't see it. You have the chest arc reactor for the bust, and the eyes will light up, and if you so wish, the Hulkbuster helmet can light up. This red section at the top here comes out to put in the batteries. This is the final shot of the Hulkbuster. Just a quick pose to show that you can put the Mark 43 in almost like a escaping or entering the Hulkbuster pose, and it'll hold up there pretty well. However, obviously be careful because he may fall down with any jarring or movements on the display cabinet. Here is the lighting on the legs, the arc reactor lit up, the gauntlet lights, and the final pose. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and catch you all at the next video.